So I'm setting up today with a new Frankford Arsenal M press. This is a coaxial press, so it mounts on the top of the bench and the handle comes down on the front, and you don't need to cut out, you've no pillars or columns going through the bench or anything like that. Any reloading bench you're going to use wants to be as solid as possible, and the press wants to be as anchored as solidly as possible too. If it's built into the wall of the building, better still. Kitchen tables sometimes work, but they're not very solid. The first thing you need to do with your reloading press is set up your dies. Frankford supply 3 lock rings for the dies, and different manufacturers will give you different setup instructions, but generally speaking most dies require winding all the way down till they touch the shell holder at top dead centre. Then lift the press away and go in about another third of a turn, and you should now be able to feel the press just come over as it hits the die. The Frankford press, as well as these 2 chrome plated columns to give you slick travel, also has its own inbuilt shell holder, and these can be adjusted and turned through 4 locations. So you've got small case, large case, 223 and 308, and they click through detented stages like that. I'm reloading some 6.5 Creedmoor today, so that's a 308 case head, and that will grip in like that. I now need to lubricate my cases so that they don't stick in the die now the die is set up. When I've got the position set, the lock ring will tighten onto the die with this brass screw. There's a supplied Allen key and there's a case here. You can see the other locking collars, and I'll be doing another one shortly for the actual bullet seating die. I'm now going to resize this case. I've lubricated it, you can see it's all over my fingers, and I'm just going to wipe the case neck and shoulder to avoid the case dimpling. This press will also remove the primer, because as the case rises, the decapping pin in the bottom of the die, which you can see here, will push the primer out, and the primer will then fall into this underside tray for disposal. As the case goes all the way into the die crimps the neck all the way down. The expander ball goes through the decapping pin, pushes the primer out, and then as the decapping ball comes back up through the neck, it expands it to size, which is why the press is hard to push down and also to pull back up. And I recommend pulling up slowly and gradually and being consistent from case to case. You can now see the case is deprimed. One really great feature of this Frankford press is that there's a USB cable and power adapter supplied, because there's a button on top here which will light up your press and work area. This is really handy and a feature I really like. One of the reasons I like the lime and spray lube is it's easy to tumble it off and dry the case when I'm tumbling the cases anyway, to clean the powder residue and soot off them. I've put corncob media in the tumbler, washer on, wing nut on top, nip that down, and I'll turn this on and leave it to run for about an hour. I tend not to tumble while I'm actually reloading cases and measuring powder, because the vibration can upset scales. When we've tumbled all our cases, what we want to do is clean them. You have to measure cases and make sure they haven't grown excessively, but generally speaking, you clean the primer pockets, and this Frankford Arsenal set has tools supplied for that. That goes in there and takes all the soot out of the case. You can also use a pocket reamer. These are both supplied in large and small rifle setups, and the pocket reamer will uniform all your cases to a specific depth to seat primers within. There are all sorts of different primer tools you can use. I tend to hand prime mine. If you have to trim cases to length, the next stage is to deburr them, and you can deburr both externally and internally with both the tools supplied here. So that is the external deburring tool, which just needs a few twists there to create a nice chamfer on the outside of the case neck, and then swap over to the internal deburring tool, which looks a bit like a large countersink. Again, just a few turns will create a nice chamfer on the inside of the case mouth now. You have to do this for all your cases, and it's something you have to do identically to each one. Different priming tools are available. I quite like these Lee hand priming tools. And then each case gets primed, and that's the next job done. The Frankford powder thrower has got a stand to keep it off the bench, and you also have a fine adjuster here to adjust the actual volume of powder being thrown. All sorts of different reloading scales are available and different processes. Today I'm using a trickler, an electronic scale from Frankford, and also a powder thrower. The powder thrower is set to about 40 grains, and I want to load 41.1. So now all I'm going to do is trickle those last few grains into the case until it reaches the exact measurement I want. The final stage is seating the bullet. So we've set up our seater die in a new lock ring now. This is quick release, so it will come in and out very easily without losing our settings. The case goes into the shell holder. Hold the bullet gently on top, just let it ride through your fingers. Different dies will work in slightly different ways, and then all the way through until it seats the bullet. And depending on the overall length we want, we can change the settings on the die to accommodate that. Reloading in itself is a vast subject, and I can't cover it all in a short video, but it's well worth doing, and I very much recommend it for the best accuracy and precision from all your rifles in centerfire format. Once it's set correctly, do all your batch of cases exactly the same.